If you're one of the many pet photographers who struggles with green tones in your photos and you find yourself going out of your mind during summer, or maybe you've seen one of my deep green forest photos and you want to know how to make these rich deep green tones, this video is for you. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to get nice deep dark forest photos by altering the greens in editing specifically. Let's get right into it. So I want to start by having a look at this photo here and talk about how we can make these deep, rich green tones. Now obviously it helps if your photo was already slightly green. You can see this one has a lot of yellows in these green tones, but it's definitely on the more green side of things. But you can see like it's quite pale, it's quite light. That being said, you'll notice how dark Loki's face is, and even having a look at the histogram, you'll see that I did underexpose slightly. It's going to be a lot easier to work on these colors and tones if the photo is slightly darker. Otherwise, you're probably just going to have to add a lot more darkness, but I will get into that in just a second. So this is the photo, this is the Lightroom edits, and you can see that I've already started working on those green tones, and eventually we got into this photo here, which is extremely deep dark forest, rich, deep cyan greens. This is maybe even a little bit more cyan than I would normally go, but you can find your own balance with where the fake plastic trees green is and a much more natural green. So the first tool that you can use in Lightroom is the HSL Panel, which you'll find down here. Yours might look slightly different to mine if you're working in Lightroom CC rather than Lightroom Classic, which is what I have here, but you definitely will still have this tool available to you. This is even on the free mobile app as well. This is not my favorite tool for changing colors because it's just not that strong, but you can definitely use it. The thing that I would warn you about is that if you're working with a dog that has any kind of yellow tone to its coat, so like Journey, who is a red dog, or any kind of golden retriever, yellow lab, even a chocolate lab maybe, you want to be careful changing this yellow slider. You'll see it actually has a pretty good effect on the greens in the background, but if I was working on Journey and sliding this slider, I would probably also be seeing a lot of a shift in his coat color as well, just because he has got a lot of those yellowy tones. So we could theoretically start here by shifting these greens a little bit more, or these yellows a little bit more toward green. We could shift the greens a little bit more towards cyan, but I wouldn't go crazy here because you can see that that looks absolutely ridiculous. The other thing we could try here would be to just desaturate the greens a little bit to start, and even drop the luminance, so we've already started darkening those greens. And this is an important point that I want to bring your attention to over here in Photoshop. One thing that a lot of people think that they need to do when they want to make richer, deeper greens, like you see in a lot of my photos, is to add saturation. So go like this. But then they end up with this neon green. You can see that that is not the color that I end up with. That is not pretty. That is absolutely neon. The thing is, if you think about when you were painting as a kid and you had a color, let's say a nice green here, if you wanted to make that color deeper and richer, would you add more green or would you add black? So when you're wanting rich, deep colors, we need to be adding black, not adding more strength to the green. If we add more strength to the green, we get that fluorescent green that you can see here. So this is adding more strength to our green. But if we add black, so I'm going to use a curves layer here and I'm going to pull down on the shadow end of the curve. Have a look at my greens. Don't worry that it's dark. Look at the way those greens have gotten richer and deeper and darker. Now obviously I would want to mask Loki out here, but remember, if you're creating a deep dark forest photo, you're going to be adding black. Like, you're going to be making the photo darker. That's kind of the point of it being deep and dark. Especially if you're starting with a photo that isn't deep and dark, you're going to need to be darkening that photo up, right? So you can see already we're getting that deep dark forest mood here. If I were to add another curves layer and kind of do the same thing, with this one, I might be a little bit more selective about where these colors are. So possibly I want to take this off of, or where this light tone is rather, might take this off of Loki and maybe just above him a little bit to make it a little bit more of a spotlight. Anywhere that has gotten a little bit too dark, I can take it off of. But check out our green tones. It now almost needs us to desaturate it because it's gotten a little bit too strong. But you can see how just adding black has created a richness to those greens that wasn't there before. So whenever you're wanting to get rich colors, adding black is a great way to go. The next tool that I want to talk about is my favorite one for changing colors, and that is the Selective Color tool. Now in this one we actually have a lot of greens, so you can go ahead and work on the greens, but I actually also usually work on the yellows, and you'll probably see just by sliding this yellow slider how much of this photo is actually yellows or in that yellow spectrum. So a couple of things you could do here. Pulling up on the cyan slider here will give you more cyan. You can see we've gone a little bit away from a kind of a limey green and into more of a cyan green. And I think for desaturating the greens, which is usually my next step, because you can see it's still very, very strong, and although they're rich and deep, they're like a little bit too much for me. And as you can see, I really haven't done much with this Selective Color tool except for pop a little bit more green in there. So my next step would usually be to grab a hue saturation layer, maybe use the little color picker tool here to just pick, oh look, it thinks it's greens today. And then this down here, this little slider, it basically says that we're working in this little color spectrum, but we can extend that out so that it starts including some of those more yellowy greens as well. So we're really covering the whole range of yellowy green colors in this image rather than just the greens specifically. And then we could drop the saturation a little bit, and we could even, if we wanted to, use the hue slider to slide it a little bit more again towards cyan. I wouldn't go too far because it is going to turn out a bit weird eventually, but you can see that's just taken out a bit of that bite from the green, a little bit of that sort of neonness. And of course in all these cases I would be masking out my dog. I've used Loki today because I can mask him out really quickly and lazily for you guys, but if you're working on a dog with color, like a red dog, brown dog, whatever, you'll definitely want to spend a little bit more time masking them out, because if they have yellow in their coat, again, edits like this in the yellows spectrum are going to affect them. If I'm editing Journey, my red dog, for example, and I do some changes to the cyans here, he will either end up looking very green or very pink. So I have to make sure that I mask him out a lot better than I do Loki. But you can see the change in our greens from this kind of pale, fluoro, bright green to the much richer, deeper, darker green. And that is all done just through adding black or adding shadows, and through very slightly tweaking the green tones and yellow tones using Selective Color. If you're working on an image that has a lot more yellow undertones in it, like at the very beginning of spring, you may need to do a little bit more with your Selective Color tool, but you can play here. Just remember that it is a really fine line between fake plastic trees and vibrant, rich, deep greens, which is hopefully what you guys are going for. If you guys have enjoyed this tutorial on making deep, dark forest greens, make sure you hit subscribe and follow along. I've got plans to make a bit of an editing tutorial for you guys using this photo of Loki here. So if you want to see how I would do a full edit of this photo, make sure you're following along, because that is going to be coming your way soon, as well as more pet photography content. I have ADHD, so making content for YouTube is not the easiest thing for me, but I am trying, and with you guys' support and letting me know that you're enjoying the content, that really inspires me to make more. So make sure you're letting me know if you're finding these videos useful, if there's things that you would like me to cover that I haven't covered, or things you'd like me to talk about in general with pet photography, and I will try at some point to make videos for it. Thanks for being here again, and I'll see you next time.